Hey everyone, and welcome to another update video around the Martech Stack Builder. Again, it's been quiet for I think about the last 2 weeks. There were some school holidays, and I really wanted to dig down into this app and some other apps that I've been working on with clients that actually went into production yesterday. So my time was pretty limited. Kind of been head down focus on that, but now I just kind of want to bring you an update on where we stand with the Martech Stack Builder. And we've actually gone beyond version 1. So exciting times. I didn't, do the full celebratory moment on LinkedIn. It was kind of like a soft launch because bugs are still kind of being detected. I found a great way to kind of loop those the reporting of those bugs back into Claude code with linear, so it actually does the investigation itself and kind of comes up with a plan. I mean, this whole thing is getting too streamlined. It's getting ridiculous. So let's have a look at some of the changes that we've made so far. And we'll kind of start with the multi-lens. And if you haven't had a look at the Martech Stack Builder before, the multi-lens is what I want to see like a sledgehammer to break down the silos, to make people more aware of the interdependency between departments within companies or between agencies and clients because there's just so much at stake here. So the multi lens, if we kind of look at the canvas right here. So of course, when you start logging in and using the Stack Builder, you'll be able to add various types of nodes here. So let's go ahead and have a look at Braze, and then you can do a search here. You can drag it onto the canvas, and then of course make any changes to that node that you see fit. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that one right there. But there's a plethora of ways to add new nodes to really expand your Martech stack and make it more visual for yourself and for your colleagues. You can even do a drag and drop, do a search, etc. Anyway, back to the multi-lens. So with multi-lens, like I said, it's really meant to break down the silos, really try to look at the Martech stack from different perspectives. When you click on multi-lens here, you'll see this new toolbar. Well, the toolbar was there, but I've kind of cleaned it up a little bit because there are some more expansions coming. But if you drop down or click on the drop down right here, you'll see different options. You've got the platform, which is just the regular view that you would look at if you're working on your Martech stack. You've got the how PII is handled throughout the flow. You've got your consent. I did make a small change to the consent, so you now have these consent features up here at the top instead of a drop down. So, for instance, if I was to say user, or to kind of simulate if a user does not give marketing marketing consent, where would the data flow and not flow? So in this case, you would actually see that within advertising, the data would not flow there theoretically. I mean, this is just a visualization tool. If we go into owners, that was still there. I've now added a little legend down here at the bottom that kind of shows the split of the ownership of the tools within the Martech stack, any that are assigned, and you can actually manage the departments by clicking on the link here. And then within departments, you can set department leads, and these will eventually be linked up to a notification system that if there are any decisions that need to be made around a specific tool, owned by a specific department, those notifications will come through. There's also the cost lens. I did focus on this a little bit last time, but I've made some upgrades now. You can now view the breakdown of the costs by team and by category, just to kind of give you an overview of where is your money going. There have been some changes in the cost aspect here. So if we click on the node, for instance, here in advertising, because that's a good example, advertising is not necessarily a license cost, but it's a ad spend cost. So you can actually change the cost type here on each individual node. You can say if it's a license, free, usage-based, ad spend, etc. And then if there's any kind of renewal date. So if we go into iterable, for instance, that would be a license type, and then the renewal date would show. You can add a renewal date up here, and that is going to feed into some new features that I'm working on that will really help you get better control on the spend on your Martech stack. So if we continue down, being inspired by Chief Martech, quick salute to Scott Brinker and Franz Riemersma. You guys are doing great work. You guys have been speaking about systems of truth and system of context. So maybe this is just kind of a little, I don't know, a little eye candy. Here you can basically add to a node if it's a system of truth or context. And I've added a little information here for you. To kind of tell what the difference is. With the system of truth, you're talking about your authoritative data stores. This is where your sources of truth lay, and then systems of context is what are you going to do? Which platforms actually consume and act on the data from the sources of truth. So it's really cool. I mean, have a read here on Scott Brinker's article on Chief Martech. I thought it was just a little bit nice to add, but yeah, a little bit of eye candy there, and a token of appreciation to those guys. But we have made a few more changes. So as you can see here, we have nodes on the canvas. The nodes are the elements within your Martech stack, but they need to connect. And the connect, as I've learned working with React Flow, is that the connections are called edges. So what I've created now is a edge lens for data flow and for security. But before I get ahead of myself, let's look at let's go into here. So I'll switch this back to platform because I like the vendor colors. Again, it's eye candy here. So if we go down into multi-lens here. So, and then within multi-lens, we go, not into the multi-lens of segment, into multi-lens of the edges here. So this is a connection between Redshift and Segment. So in here, you can actually detail the information about what kind of data flow it is. So in this case, it would be a batch. We can say every 15 minutes, I need to find out a nicer solution for the frequency there. And then we can talk about the connection. Is it a native one built into Segment to connect to Redshift? What is used? Is it an API key? I believe that should be OAuth 2. But again, that gets into the details that you'll be able to fill in properly for your Martech stack. And then there's the database format. And I'm not sure about, I don't think it's, let's just put it on CSV for right now. I think I'm not exactly sure. Let's save it real quick. So we've got the keyboard shortcuts there. So we've got the context now for these edges. So if you are in multi-lens mode, you'll see this button here called Edit Table. And that's kind of a method to quickly edit all these all the metadata for your different nodes, but now also for edges. So if you up top here, if you click on edges, you'll be able to see all the different connections. So from iOS SDK to Segment, from Segment to Amplitude, and so on and so on. And you, in this table, you can actually fill everything in one go. Makes it really easy. The nice thing about that now, once you have that filled in, is that if you go into data flow here, you can actually get a visual overview of how that data is flowing between these different connections with a small legend here. So if you look at the orange edge line or edge color, it represents batch data. Blue is real time, and so on. And I think the amplitude one might be both. I need to check on that one. But anyway, this is just dummy data right here. So that's the update on the multi-lens. The other updates, and as you can see, once you change the values here, you've got these little labels on the edges, and you can drag them, drop them, reposition them if you need to. And you can change the line types. This is a little bit of a cleanup. The features were here, but it's just a bit of a cleanup now that it makes it a little bit more straightforward. You still have the whole panel here on the right-hand side for all the information. You can still add an additional label that'll prepend, I believe. No, yeah, it'll prepend to the label that's created by the connection type. Alrighty, so that is the multi-lens. Let's move on to research. So again, research, I called it research. I don't want to call it, like AI this, AI that. We're getting a little bit too silly with all the AI labeling. But truth be told, AI is behind this. Now, what makes this research assistant so special? It's special because when you start looking at the data that you're putting into your canvas here, you're putting in not only that you're using Segment, But if I click segment real quickly here, or let's put in iterable. Iterable is a good example. I've added this new vendor capabilities section here. So Iterable is a customer engagement platform, but you can use it for email delivery, push notifications, messaging, etc. So these vendor capabilities, I'll be expanding on them in the future. But all this information that you're entering here, including these little status update bars, you are putting this data into that AI research function. So as soon as I want to do, and even do an implementation roadmap, or if I want to do an evaluation, we can do executive one-page summary. Let's do real-time personalization, analytics and insights, small one, and we are in e-commerce retail. And let's see how well are we geared up for the upcoming Black Friday campaign in terms of reporting. So you do the run AI evaluation. This will run in the background, but basically it collects all the metadata that we just saw in the table from the multi-lens, and it will push that through. So now I get a one-page summary right here, and I can actually see, all right, we have the strengths that we have right now, centralized data, event routing through a segment, et cetera. And then we have 2 points of concern here. Let me just double check. Reporting latencies and inconsistency risk from mixed batch and real-time flows. True, because I've labeled the data coming from segment into Amplitude as being batch. And if you want to kind of steer your campaigns in near real time, which we also opted for, real-time personalization here, that might be a little bit of a hurdle. But it's cool to see that it actually takes all this data, all the factors into account. You got Amplitude versus Redshift. You've got let me see, what else did you put in here? Warehouse and streaming layer under leverage. There's an unclear role of what between Kafka and Redshift and segment. Often, what is behind Kafka? That's something we can look into. But this is a one-page summary that you can then copy or download and send out with potential action points. We've gone ahead and updated all of these kind of reports, putting more visualizations in, even cost forecasting. So the original cost kind of input field is that, let's do a rerun here. You can actually now opt in for include forecast for 6 months, and then say what you want to, what you want to take into account for in the forecasting. We also have the data flow. It does a better analysis of how data is flowing through your system, and if it's seeing any potential risks here. For instance, is seeing segment as the kind of the single bottleneck. What happens if segment falls out? It has effect on everything here downstream. That's something great that's to flag. And I believe also last time we had the alternatives. So from the alternatives, we did also a visualization improvement here for the compare feature, and I've also added a brief feature. But what I want to dive into right here, right now, is this alternatives report. So when we click one here, and again, not bad mouthing any brand here or any vendor. Let's say you did a alternative research for segment. There are 2 ways you can do this. The easiest way is to kind of right click here and choose suggest alternatives, and that will pop in right here. So let's say we want to choose what would be a good opportunity right here. Let's do RudderStack. I think we did that last time as well. There are a few features here right now. So we already had the propose and compare. I've just cleaned up the buttons here, but the new one is the RFI. And this is kind of my segue into this feature up here under requests. You can do a request for change, which I'll get into, but also a request for information. So if I was to say request for information, I actually did, and I want to save you some time. So let's go into request for information. You'll see here the RudderStack for data collection replacing segment. So this one's been generated. So let's have a look at that. What it does is it offers you go through a list of questions, though, mind you, because there are some considerations that need to be made. For instance, these are all the feedback questions you get. I mean, in a new video or a separate video, I'll actually go through those questions with you. But this gets so cool, by the way. So what it returns is, and I need to update the visualization on this, is it returns an actual cover letter that you can send. I mean, let's be fair. Vendors are scoring your RFI requests using AI. And I know it gets silly to have AI talk to AI, but why not use AI in your leverage as a agency or as a brand to generate this information, review it, of course, and then send it over to the various vendors. Mind you, you are putting that information in here of your current stack. So that RFI is going to be quite accurate, let alone the kind of use cases that you need to fill in the questionnaire leading up to an RFI. So, I mean, I don't want to say fight fire with fire, but just make your life a lot easier with this RFI feature. So as you can see, this is all fake data, by the way. Through the process, you can put in key decision makers, if they have an account or not, and everything will be mentioned here. Any kind of deadlines. There's the company overview. It'll do some research on your company, put that in here, so you can project scope. Everything will be more or less copy and pasteable for an RFI request that you want to send out. Any contextual information, and pulls everything in. Any connections that you have, any data collection requirements you can put in as well. But it also uses the information from your stack and from a potential comparison. If you did a comparison before or search for alternatives, it'll actually pull that information in there to add additional context for the vendors to answer. So again, this is the whole RFI feature, but what is the most crucial part of an RFI? And that's the actual processing of the feedback you get back from the vendors. You have a scoring rubric. So based on the RFI that's generated, a scoring rubric is generated. So you see here the breakdown of the sections, the areas that you want to be scoring that RFI on. But what good is a scoring rubric if you can't do the scoring? But of course you can do the scoring, because we've built in a scoring feature right now. So there are three features here right now. So you have the score entry, and well, let me not get ahead of myself. So what we did was during the RFI becomes very generic. So you can add multiple vendors to that RFI and send it out. So for instance, here I've to this Rudderstack data collection RFI, which you can actually rename. So I was actually a segment replace. Here we go. Segment replacement. All right, cool. We have three options here. We have Rudderstack, we have Snowplow, and we have MetaRouter for replacing segment events. Yep. Just as a kind of example here. So this way you can actually see, you can start scoring all these various feedback items. But if I go to this one right here, the consensus one, you can actually see the scores compared to the other people that have filled them in. Getting ahead of myself right here, right now. So as you can see, if you remember correctly, in the beginning, there was this stakeholders in the R5 generated report, or the R5 that was generated. You can actually add stakeholders, and these stakeholders can additionally supply feedback, which is pretty cool, right? If you forgot to add someone here, you can still add them here. And of course, if I click, as you can see here, this one has been supplied. So you can even invite users and they'll get a page like this. They can fill out everything. They can leave. This one's been submitted, so I can't show anything how it really works, but there are places to give the score and give comment, and they can do it for all the vendors that are being considered. And that way you can quickly add the name and the email, and you can, for the people who don't have that you need to key roles like the CTO or CMO, these are fake, by the way, and you want them to participate in it, but they don't need an account on Martech Stack Builder, you can easily also fill it in for them or send them an invite. So there are a few options here. So you go through the whole process, you do the scoring, so you can actually give your comments here, and they will be taken into account. There's a comparison. All the scores from from everything that's collected is put into here, so you can get a quick overview of the score comparison. And then there's the consensus, and the consensus is it takes into account every piece of feedback, but also comments. But it also checks to see if there are any outliers in terms of scoring, so-called disagreements. And as you can see, there are quite a few here because I was just clicking through them. But it's interesting to see nonetheless that, so if you come back to the scoring rubric, these are all the items on there. And you can actually open them up and see the comments left by people here, transparent about limitations, etc. And again, more comments here, and I see a little bug. See, that's why it's good to do these little update videos, because I'm seeing a bug that I need to fix right here. But no worry about that. And then that's it. And you can at a certain point lock the scores as the owner of that RFI, and then you can export it, and you can actually start taking the next steps in that RFI. Maybe you want to do an RFP. Maybe that's something I need to work on. It's very close to an RFI. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So that's the RFIs. And there's one more thing that I quickly want to show right here is the request for change. This was in the previous version that I shared with you guys, but I've kind of streamlined it a little bit. And before it was just tool replacement, adding a tool, removing a tool, and there was this, I believe, some other feature. So this other I've kind of turned into this. So we can, in here, there are things like add a data flow, modify an integration, options for governance, architecture, even team discussions right here. So you can go through this entire process and look at these changes. Let me quickly click here. So I want to do view requests, and then you'll have changes right here, so we can actually take a look at one. And what I like about this feature now, and I think I've mentioned it before, is that you go through this entire process of a internal request for change. You're able to have discussions about it. You can see the approvals needed. In this case, it has been approved. You can get a full timeline of everything that needs to be done. You can run a based on all the metadata. Again, it includes everything from your stack and potentially the node or the edge in question, and pulls that data in to generate an implementation roadmap right here. So you can see step by step what needs to be done. And you can then break it down into tasks that you can assign to certain people within your team. I've got somebody in my team that has the same name. So, and then change the actual status. So any kind of, if something is blocked, it will show up in the timeline. I am working on functions to export this into Linear or into Jira. Maybe you want to manage it there. Let me know if you're interested in that. If you're still watching, let me know if you're interested in that. I'm definitely looking for testers. I'm a Linear guy myself. But that's about it. Thank you for your attention today. And thank you for all the feedback that I've been getting, and the wishes of success with this tool. I'm looking forward to expanding it even further. Like I said, there's a huge feature in progress right now that'll make it a little bit more interesting to control costs, and at least get a nice overview of that.